Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dream Business, Dream Life. Today I'm joined by Clare Deacon. Clare is a trauma-informed positive psychology coach, therapist and founder of Happya. Clare's mission is to help individuals embrace their potential and achieve lasting happiness. Hello Clare, great to have you here with us today.
Hi, Emma. Thank you for having me on. Really looking forward to having a good chat today.
Me too. I love a conversation. Right, as I do with these things, I'm going to go straight for it. We're going to dive straight in. So let's start by going back to 2016, because 2016 for you, Clare, was a moment in life where everything changed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was indeed. So 2016 started off actually being a dream year for us because we knew I've got twins and we knew they were going to be going to school that year. And we made the decision around this time, right in that Christmas, New Year season, that we were going to take the children all to Disney World that summer, have a great summer, and that the twins would be going off to school in the September. But 2016 didn't turn out how we expected it. And literally within a couple of weeks of returning back from that holiday, my husband unexpectedly passed away early in the October. So I'd gone from having this dream year that we were going to have. Things were really changing. Obviously, world gets turned upside down when you have twins enter your world, and I had an older one as well. Um, so it was really going to be a year of change for us, and things happened. Well, that obviously threw everything into complete turmoil. And it was a real time of reflection and making that decision that it was really tough being stuck in the survival mode. The thing was, I had spent a lifetime really fighting for everything that I had. I had grown up in a household where there was domestic abuse and violence. My way out was going to university, and I had fought and fought to achieve what I had in my career, to meet my husband, to get my children, and to build that house and that world around us. So to have it all taken away really felt like, obviously, there's all the grief, but a huge stomach punch there that really perhaps I wasn't deserving enough of having success and all of that in my life. And kind of what was the point of keeping on fighting if I was not allowed to live more than survival? But I had to do it. I had three young children who were looking at me desperate that, their magic had already been taken out of their world. And I was really determined that my husband's legacy was not going to be one of a broken family, that for his memory, he deserved to have a family and his children to grow up and still fulfill all of the dreams and aspirations that we had for them and that they had for themselves. So I kind of made the decision that if I was going to live this life and fight these challenges, because we all know they come, life sends us curveballs. If I was going to do it, then I was going all in, and I was now going to do it my way. So I made the decision to leave the corporate world. I was in a job at the time where I wasn't feeling particularly fulfilled. I wanted something different, didn't know what it was. And I guess one of the light bulb moments was I was sat there not knowing how to take that leap or when to take that leap. I had been in that corporate role in that company for coming up to 20 years. So I had been there for a long time. It had been a place where I'd been engaged, I'd got married, I'd done all of those things, big life changes. So to leave there was a big change. And I was a strategic planner. So you always have that 5 year plan of what you're going to do next. So to resign from a position where I didn't know what I was going to do was huge. And I kind of in my head had said, I can leave, I need to know what I'm doing. But my head was so shut down. And obviously, I understand why now and how now. But that brain fog, all of that piece, my brain had shut down. I wasn't capable of thinking of the future. I wasn't capable of how that could build. So I couldn't come up with this alternative plan. So I just sat there literally with a blank piece of paper. And then one day I asked myself a different question. What would it feel like to still be sat here in a year's time with a blank sheet of paper? And that had more fear attached to it than the fear of unknown, because that would be time and a life wasted. And I had just learned the lesson that every moment is not a given. So I said to myself, okay, so your biggest fear is if it doesn't work out. And if it doesn't work out, then I rebuild and I go back into the corporate world. I'd done it once, I could do it again. And that meant that I literally sat there and I wrote my resignation letter out. I did give myself a contingency. It was a bank holiday weekend. So I went, right, okay, I wrote the letter, printed it, put it in the bottom of my handbag, and then went, I'll give myself the weekend. My handbag had never felt so on fire for an entire weekend because I knew once I had that letter, I knew that that was the right thing to do. So I left the corporate world and embarked on a journey of really reconnecting with myself, helping my children heal, rebuilding a life for us, having fun and living in the moment. I did all different types of therapy and counselling. I learned shamanic drumming and yoga, and I did sound baths. I did Reiki. I did EFT. All these different things. Just trying them out, see what helped me, see what worked, what didn't work, what helped my children as well. They were involved in some of those, and then I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, this has been great, but I need something, and I need an income, and I need something to stimulate me intellectually. And I had also got my life into a position where I was really enjoying life. I was thriving. I had started to grow new areas. So I knew I wanted something very different, didn't know what that was. So I got a university prospectus because I tend to like being the expert in the area that I'm in. So I sat flicking through, came across psychology, and was like, that's really interesting. I'd spent a lifetime kind of reading different books of how things worked. When I'd gone through my therapy, I used to frustrate my therapist because quite often I'd be going, tell me the science behind that. I want to understand that, which doesn't actually help you in repairing. I need to leave her to do her job and for me to do mine. um so ultimately I made the decision to go back to university to train in psychology. Didn't know what that was going to look like. Um and there was lots of different career paths, and then one day I was sat in a lecture in positive psychology, and we were looking at post-traumatic growth, which ultimately is the discovery that after someone experiences trauma, they can actually recover from it to a place where they are happier than they were prior to the trauma. And the reason why part of this happens is because you prioritize, you learn what's most important in your life, and you rebuild it how you want it to be. And you uphold boundaries better because you know the cost, you know the price that has been paid a lot of the time. And it was literally in that lecture room where I knew what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to find a way that I could help others find that growth, that knowing the science was there, that it was a proven way of doing it, that I could show people that, because my experience of our mental health industry is that it's illness led. It focuses on what's wrong with you. Whereas positive psychology takes your strengths, takes all that's great about you, all your desires, your dreams, your aspirations, and builds and focuses on that. And that helps you build that resilience. It doesn't deny the challenges that come our way, doesn't ignore all of that. Everything's in the right balance. But I felt there was a real gap there. So I went into qualifying in positive psychology, coaching psychology. I trained as a hypnotherapist, an EFT practitioner. I've since done brain spotting, various different pieces of work in PTSD and CPTSD, so that I can provide solution whether you're looking to process past, you're looking to be present in your here and now, or whether you're looking to build the future. And it's where I discovered my passion in doing that.
What a story. I mean, where do we even start unpicking that? I mean, everybody knows my journey, my personal journey over the last couple of years, and I resonate with so much of what you have said. Where you said about, I'd always question why this is the case. Why does something always have to happen before we realise how precious life is? And I think you've just very, very briefly touched on that there is actually some science behind that, and there's a reason behind that. But that is so, so true, isn't it? Quite often we go through something traumatic, and you might not see it as traumatic at the time because it doesn't have to be, for both myself and you, Claire, it's been a loss, but it doesn't have to be a loss, does it? A trauma can be lots and lots of things, an individual to you. But that really does make you look at things differently, doesn't it? But not everybody, I guess, takes that, probably the wrong choice of word here, opportunity
Yeah.
to build on what they are given, and that I assume is where you can help people. Am I correct?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, what I'd like to touch on with what you said is really trauma isn't about the size magnitude of the event. It's not about the event. It's about the consequence that it has on you. So what may be really traumatic for one individual could be something that someone else can quite easily brush off. And that's for a whole sense of reasons. It's how it undermines your sense of safety, security. It's how resilient you are, and all of those things. So it's really important to recognize that you're not weaker or failing because an event has had a more of a detrimental impact on you than it has on other people. So what is different is people being able to connect and see that point and understand the possibility and believe in the potential that there is something different. So one of the pieces of work that I really wanted to understand, and I did as my dissertation for my master's, was understanding the difference between those individuals who experienced a life-changing event, something that really rocked the foundations of your life. Why, for some people, that event of that magnitude leads to post-traumatic growth, whilst for others, you fall into a place of what's known in psychology as learned helplessness. So ultimately, I describe it as a trauma swamp. So you're stuck in a very muddy swamp and you're fighting just to keep your head above water. And that position just isn't sustainable for you. How come some people end up in that place and yet some can experience growth and find they're happier? Now, there's not as much scientific evidence around this as you would hope. There's not as much research. It just hasn't been looked into for the length of time that other areas of psychology have done. Now, there's some evidence that perhaps will say, well, if you have more resources available to you, it helps you get that help, it helps you find other solutions, it's easier to rebuild. There's other things around having community around you, so having that infrastructure and support network. And then there's different evidence around personality and things like that. But fundamentally, all of those things are irrelevant if you don't have what's called a locus of control. Now, ultimately, this is around your belief system. If you believe you are subjected to what happens in your life and you don't have control over it, then you are more likely to fall into learned helplessness. And finding that place of growth is going to be harder. those that find themselves with post-traumatic growth are those that fundamentally believe they can make a difference. So they get up, they fight, they go for it, they take action. You think about it. If you're looking around for opportunity of doing something different, of making changes, then abundance kind of flows to you. It's this whole concept of manifesting that change, and it brings in more. And when you feel that success, it gives you that motivation, and your body physically responds to this. It gives you that motivation to take the next step and the next step and the next step. And no matter how tiny they are, all put together, you start to see yourself getting up that mountain of improving your life. And that's really where change comes about, and where positive psychology and me supporting you from that is to enable you to make that change. So I'm kind of that scientific cheerleader alongside you to support you in challenging some of your limiting beliefs, challenging, helping you and supporting you and holding you when it gets hard. Because the reality is, when you're in the eye of a storm, trying to move forward and take those steps is not going to help you. At that point, you need to look after your well-being, to feel grounded, to rest and recuperate, to set yourself straight before you go off on that journey. And then it's after that that you can then start challenging yourself to take those steps. So I work with individuals who are in kind of both of those camps. Some people come to me where their well-being is challenged, that they are struggling with daily life, that everything feels hard, experiencing anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, all of those things. And it's about stabilizing that, grounding that, and bringing them a sense of calm before we embark on this journey to find your happier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, try not to lose my voice here. I think for me, going back through my personal journey, there's sort of 2 points in my life. There's probably more, but there's two that I can pinpoint in my life in terms of what I would consider trauma moments for me, where it's done that thing, it's triggered that. Is this how I'm going to live now, or am I going to do something about it? And I think my reaction to both of them was probably quite different in a way. And I don't know if that's because I don't know if there's such a thing as trauma stacking, as in you haven't allowed yourself to properly, that's a great word, properly heal from one batch of trauma. For me, that was how I was on the back of the business, my previous business, how that made me feel, the suicidal attempts and all of that sort of stuff. So that was still, even though I thought I had done a lot of work, I probably hadn't gone deep enough to repair that. So when we lost Becky, I think for me, it was like, here we go again. I've just started to build my life back up again, which is how it felt. You know, I came into 2023, but like you said, you came into 2016 feeling this is it. You know, I'm ready now. I feel like I've done what I've needed to do, parked that bit, ready to move on to the next journey. And then thought something hits you. And I think it's just interesting that one person can react differently and behave differently to those two types of trauma. And I suppose that's common, isn't it? We don't necessarily all show up the same and behave the same, even if it's
Yep.
something we've been traumatized by more than once. Does that even make
Okay.
sense?
Absolutely makes sense. So there's a couple of points I'd really like to pick up on here. So I'll pick up on your last one first. So if I explained, I've told you I have twins. So their reactions and them processing the same traumatic event, so they were told in the same moment in time, they have both responded differently because they are different individuals. And quite in psychology, they do a lot of twin studies. So they look at identical twins. So mine are non-identical. I've got a boy and a girl. And um, they look at the differences. Now, the thing is, all of your reactions change dependent on if you're twin one or twin two, and you might have been the one fed first or got the first load of nutrition towards the second, being delivered first rather than second. But every single moment sets you out. So no matter if you think about a straight line and you traveling on that journey, even the slightest of change off of that journey as you go over time will see you quite a distance between why one person responds in one way to how another person responds. So that's why, and how you can see, really that difference take place. Now, going back to the point that you made about having that trauma underlying, yes, you can have those things build up. So, how I describe this is having your bucket. And sometimes your bucket fills up and so it just gets to a point where it overflows. So, quite often we ignore our emotions, ignore things that are going on. We show that stiff upper lip. We just need to get on, mend and make do, all of that kind of philosophy. And it does build up. I completely understand how you've explained it there. So after my husband passed away, I was advised that I had PTSD from my husband's death, but it had actually re-triggered CPTSD from my experience in childhood. So there was a catalogue of things, events. So CPTSD is complex PTSD. So it's where there's been a series of events ongoing, not just a one-off event that has triggered it. So the PTSD that I had from my husband's death had re-triggered all of those older events from my childhood, from growing up, everything that I hadn't processed. So there had been other things that had happened that had all had a traumatic effect on me that had just compounded itself. So underneath all of that, what happens is I'm a very visual describer. So all of these layers of this stuff happens, and as it happens, it compacts down, and you're underneath that. And you get smaller and smaller. You either, because you're feeling unsafe, so you hide, but you're getting compounded by these different things that happen. And this is where, so my book is called Blooming Happier, because it's about taking those layers off and blooming out to uncover yourself in there. So absolutely, we do lift on these layers, and it can be another event that suddenly will trigger something from our past. And actually, it can be positive events that re-trigger something from our past as well. So in the good times, when something, if we haven't processed something from the bad, we can resist success. We can resist putting ourselves forward for different things, because even in our unconscious mind, we may have a belief that if something good happens, then something bad's going to happen. It's going to be taken away. So we don't take that step. So lots of people do experience that. And that's one of the really important and most valuable things of working with individuals one to one, is that quite often people will come to you saying and explaining, I've been like this, I understand it, I've read the books, I've seen the stuff and all of this. But it's being able to see outside of that, of what that limiting belief is, because it can be buried quite deep.
Yeah, it can. It
And
can.
it's allowing that to come forward.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that we don't always even know what has triggered us to feel like we're feeling, because there isn't necessarily a moment of something specific. If you'd have said to me, a few years ago that, what I went through in my business was trauma, I'd have just gone, well, no, it wasn't. I just did something that I didn't enjoy. I did that. It was a me problem. I don't need to think about that or be healed from that. I just move on and then it's gone. That was
Yeah,
how I thought when I walked away back in 2021 when I started afresh. I think that's how I thought, well, that's it now, it's done, it's gone. It's never going to
yeah,
come back again. Yeah, exactly. And I think I would have probably just put a line under that forever if I hadn't have had the other batch of trauma that was a little bit more open for other people. I think, I don't know if it's an acceptance thing, that it feels like it was more appropriate for me to say, actually, I think I do need some sort of help and support here because this is a traumatic event. And I think that's a key point, isn't it, that we don't always know what's causing it, but it's how let's turn this into business owners, because a lot of the people who are listening to this are going to be business owners. So, as a business owner who is perhaps feeling a bit they know something's not quite right, but they can't sit here and say they've been through I'm going to use the word traumatic event because, as
Yeah.
we've already discovered, that is lots and lots of things. But I think people often assume, and I will hold my hand up and say at one point I would have been that person too, that trauma is something that we can pinpoint, something huge, something life changing. So there's probably a lot of people who are feeling they're not aligned to the business. They're not happy. They're not, particularly enjoying what they're doing, not enjoying life, but they haven't really got a reason that they can pinpoint. What would your advice be to people who are in that situation, business owners specifically?
Okay. So I think that, a great tool for looking at that really is about journaling and challenging and going deeper and deeper. Just go with the whys. Okay, so why and what and getting it and going further and further down. And you will also notice in yourself, you'll notice physical bodily changes in you. So you might have a bit of the ick feeling, you might have something stuck in your throat. So people who are going out on stage trying to speak their truth, they'll find words can't come out of their mouth, that they feel sick, and it will be potentially that something that they are saying is connected to a belief and an issue that they have there. So looking and understanding what the action is that you are struggling to take, or what perspective you are struggling to see, asking yourself why it is, and going deeper on that so that you can really understand and take time to reflect on it. I think the important thing is taking care of yourself and making yourself feel safe is what enables those layers to become looser. You're not going to do it unless you feel safe. Your nervous system is going to clamp down, shut down, and not allow you to look at anything that it thinks may harm you. So it locks it away. And what you need to do is take the hand of that part of yourself and say, I'm here for you, I'm showing up for you, we've got this, let's do it together. Let's take each step at a time and breaking it down into steps that do feel manageable.
Yeah, because we do that, don't we? If we don't like something, we just sort of try and like forget about it, or oh, that's okay, I'll just stick that over there, put that in a box. That won't come away again. But at some point, that box somehow just seems to sneak open, doesn't it, and bite you on the bottom. So journaling is something that I never used to do, something that I do now. And I personally am a massive advocate for it. So would you say that everybody should journal? I know everybody won't because it doesn't suit everybody, but do you think it's something that would work for most people, that would help people to understand who they really are and how they're really feeling?
Yes, but I think journaling can be done in many different ways. So scientifically, handwriting it actually has a greater impact to you using any other forms, because of you're not only thinking it, but then you're having to instruct your hand and you're then seeing it on the page, so it kind of reinforces the message. But for some people, that again can feel too overwhelming and unsafe. I have some clients who come to me and go, I don't journal. I don't really see the point of it. I don't want to do it. Now, there's some blocks there because it's saying, actually, we don't want to do this because this is going to open us up. So for that, I will use guided prompts. So I will give them questions that they will answer. Now, some of that journaling and that reflective piece, if you think about it, takes place in a one-to-one interaction. So it may not be you going away and writing in a journal. It may just be exploring some of those things that are journal prompts on a one-to-one basis in a chat and seeing what comes up for you. We can also, that's where also EFT and hypnotherapy give you access to that unconscious part of your brain to allow some of those thoughts to come to the surface and for you to realize them. And it's in some of that. So meditation practice will help you just open the doors to relax into that reflective mode.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. I could literally talk to you all day about this stuff because it is something that I absolutely am super passionate about too. I just don't have the skills that you have to help people through it. So, at the end of every episode, I ask my guests to share with us a top tip. So, what would your top tip be?
I think really, and I think it's important at the moment as well, when life feels overwhelming, to ask yourself, what's one small thing you can do to feel grounded right now, to settle that overwhelm and just calm. So it might be take that breath, it could be feel your feet on the floor, have that cup of tea, whatever it is for you, but just to take that moment to reconnect with yourself so that you that loosen and you become connected to that individual that becomes hidden under all of those layers of day-to-day life.
Absolutely love that. So, finally, Claire, if any of our listeners want to come and learn more about you, how you can support them, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Okay, so you can find me happiercoach.com, or also on Instagram as Happya Coach. Just remember, I spell happier Happya, because everybody's happier is unique.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me today, Claire. It has been absolutely amazing chatting with you. And thank you to everybody else for listening. I will see you next time.